The Eagles just embarrassed Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, not really because Mahomes forgot how to play quarterback, but because the Chiefs dominated at the line of scrimmage. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts looked like a superstar with elite protection. So the big question I have for Clemson fans is, will the Tigers dominate like the Eagles in 2025, or will they struggle like the Chiefs? That's all coming up right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of this show, part-time host and producer over at 105.5 FM The Roar. And thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new to the show, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Oh, and also that notification bell so you never miss an episode of all the exclusive content I put out every single week. And don't forget to follow me over on X at the Morgan T Show. I talk all over there all the time, and I can chat anytime. So I'm always checking out X. So follow me over there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Coming up on today's show, also, we're going to talk about how did Clemson topple number 2 Duke Blue Devils in Littlejohn Coliseum, and how maybe they can use that momentum to beat and use the same energy to beat the North Carolina Tar Heels tonight in Littlejohn as well. 2 home games back-to-back, 2 big games against North Carolina teams, and I know that you Tiger fans are really, really looking forward to it. Let's start off with the first big thing, which was the Super Bowl last night. I watched the entire game, and I really thought I enjoyed the game. Honestly, I know the score really didn't seem like it would be one of those games that you would really, as a football fan, enjoy. But I got to admit, if you've listened to me over on the radio, you know that I like to have an alter ego sometimes when I call into Walt Deptula's show during Road Rage in the afternoon. And one of my loving alternates is Philly Mo, where I try to pretend like I'm from Philadelphia, which, you know, it's a terrible idea, terrible accent, terrible impersonation, if you will. But I do it anyways. Philly Mo is my guy who is a big-time Philadelphia Eagle fan. And I felt like the Eagles would win only really because I'm tired of seeing Taylor Swift. I'm tired of seeing Patrick Mahomes. And I'm tired of seeing Travis Kelce talked about over and over. Now, the only reason why I would maybe want to see the Chiefs win is because of DeAndre Hopkins and being a former Clemson player and graduate. And this was his first time in the Super Bowl. So I kind of felt bad about not wanting the Chiefs to win, but also kind of, had a little bit in my heart to see DeAndre Hopkins do well, which he did. He finally got a touchdown later on in the game. But man, let me tell you something. You look at that game and you think, wow, what happened? How did the Eagles dominate so well against the Chiefs, who really were one of the best teams, have been one of the best teams in the past 5 years or so under Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes? And I don't think it's really because Patrick Mahomes has forgotten how to play quarterback. I don't think it's because Andy Reid or Steve Spagnuolo has forgotten how to, coach the team. But I do feel like that there was one key area that the Eagles dominated in and that the Chiefs did not. And that was the line of scrimmage, and really the line of scrimmage on both sides. And that's where I kind of took a step back and I thought, well, I wonder where Clemson would fall in 2025. Do they fall more on the Eagles side of things? Now, again, I'm not talking like they are the Eagles. Don't get too hyped for 2025 just yet. I'm not saying that they are the Eagles. But what I am saying is that, are they more like the Eagles in 2025, or are they more like the Chiefs in 2025? The Chiefs, I read a stat where they had to come from behind for 12 games out of 16 this season. So it was one of those things where the Chiefs weren't an extremely dominant team that they have been in the past. And so it kind of set up well for the Eagles to go in and get their redemption game against Patrick Mahomes. Let's break it down a little bit further in what we saw from last night's game and see if we can connect it. And let me see how you feel about Clemson's chances of being one or the other. So Jalen Hurts played well, don't get me wrong, but the trenches were where it was won on both sides of the ball. Starting on the Eagles side, they sacked Patrick Mahomes 6 times. And that's, I believe, the most he's ever been sacked in a game. Josh Sweat had 2.5 sacks, and he was constantly in the backfield. Philly's defense, I listened this morning, they didn't even need to blitz, and they got 49% pressure, 49% of the time pressure on the quarterback, only sending 4 defensive linemen. Now, that's a thing where if you look at in relation to Clemson, I think Clemson is probably better at protecting Cade Klubnik. You know, they really didn't give up a ton of sacks. They were in the top 35, I believe, in sacks last year with Cade Klubnik, and returning a lot of their last year's starters on the offensive line. I feel pretty confident that you won't see that from Cade Klubnik. You won't see what you saw with the Chiefs, where Patrick Mahomes just basically running for his life. Having to get sacked 6 times in a game is never a recipe for success. And just having the defensive edge guys coming in and just tearing apart your protection is never good. And I do feel like that's where Clemson has been better. Now, can they do that? Can they do that on the defensive side of the ball? I think so, with Will Helt and TJ Parker and Peter Woods and DeMonte Capehart, those guys that you have returning on the defensive front. Really, Clemson's offensive line has starting returners on both sides for the majority, and they've injected new life on the defensive edge side. So I think that looks good for Clemson to see more like the Eagles when it comes to the defense, and more like the Eagles when it comes to the offense side of the ball. So I'm giving you a little bit of a hint so far of where I'm going. But the Eagles offensive line did well to protect Jalen Hurts. He was only sacked twice. He had 221 yards and 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley was kind of bottled up, which I could see that maybe being a similarity to 2025 for Clemson, where they are still trying to figure out what they're going to do in the running game. But they have enough weapons in the passing game to where they can overcome that. And as long as Cade Klubnik has that protection, then it'll go well for Clemson. Now, on the Chiefs side of the ball, not only was Patrick Mahomes just flustered and sacked a ton and just had to run for his life, but he had 2 interceptions, and really both of them were really, really bad. But one was a pick 6 to Cooper DeJean, and really all kind of result to that one thing, which was that line of scrimmage pressure. The offensive line was overwhelmed for the Chiefs. They gave up more pressures than they ever had all season. And the results were that the game was out of hand before it really even got started. And so that's kind of really the basic of what happened in the Super Bowl game last night. But what does this really mean for Clemson? And I think Cade Klubnik really, he's not going to be a good quarterback that has a bad offensive line and bad defensive line. I don't think that what you saw with the Chiefs, and I really don't think they're that bad. I just don't think that, they were that good against the Eagles. But the defensive line, offensive line were played very poorly, and it made Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL, or one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, look really bad. I don't see that happening in 2025. I think that Cade Klubnik, behind this offensive line that they have, a lot of the returning guys, adding in Colin Sadler, who's coming back from injury, adding in Elijah Thurman, who's coming back from injury. I think this offensive line sets up well when they're healthy, starting into the season, going into that LSU game. I think that this offensive line sets up to be dominant in 2025. Now, what is their ceiling? I don't know. I still have a big question mark on how dominant they can be, but I do think for their schedule, for the ACC and the 2 SEC teams they're going to play, I think that they can be really, really good, and they can protect Cade Klubnik enough to get the ball out to the playmakers on in the receiving core in the passing game. So, would you say Cade Klubnik has more of a strong offensive line with the Eagles, or a weaker offensive line like the Chiefs? I would say I'm leaning more towards the Eagles. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, do you think that the Clemson defense is more like the Eagles or more like the Chiefs? I think with the 2 interceptions and the time in the backfield, as much as they were, forcing Patrick Mahomes to have one of his worst passer ratings ever, Okay. First half passer ratings ever, worst. And really, they only had, I think, 23 yards in the first half. Just an absolute domination by the line of scrimmage on both sides. And really, I think Clemson is going to look more like the Eagles in 2025. Now, will I say they'll be the best team in the country? No, I'm not going to say that yet. Time will tell. We have to let the games get played. But if you're just taking this one snapshot of that one game and you're saying to yourself, hey, is Clemson going to have a good offensive line against most of their opponents? Or are they going to have struggle on the line of scrimmage against most of their opponents? I think that they're going to be more successful on the line of scrimmage against their opponents in 2025. So I'm going to put a check mark over on Clemson will be more like the Eagles. But let me know what you think as well. Kind of wanted to give a shout out to some of the Clemson players who were in the Super Bowl before we go to segment 2. DeAndre Hopkins, as I mentioned earlier, caught a touchdown later on in the game. It really kind of, he didn't even really get to celebrate it, unfortunately, because, it was really kind of out of hand by that time. So I kind of feel bad that in that way, but he does get to say he caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Not only did he play in the Super Bowl, but he caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Will Shipley had a pretty nice kickoff return. He had one return for 25 yards. Jeremiah Trotter recorded a tackle, so he was in there. And KJ Henry gets a Super Bowl ring as well for being a part of the Eagles. And I saw a picture that Ross Taylor, SID of football, posted of Jeremiah Trotter Jr. hugging his dad after the Super Bowl in the celebration. And I thought, man, wow, what a full circle moment there. Really special for the Trotter family to be able to enjoy that and get, in his rookie season, a Super Bowl ring. So Clemson's talent is shining at the next level, and the Tigers, I believe, will bring the Eagles type dominance in 2025 to the line of scrimmage. Coming up next, I'm going to talk to you about Clemson versus Duke and how excited I was to see them take down the number 2 Duke Blue Devils. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets with same game parlay. FanDuel's app is super easy to use, making it a breeze to place bets and navigate different sports. I love the variety of betting options they offer. Plus, their promotions are always awesome, like this one. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, I wanted to dive into one of the biggest wins in Clemson basketball history. The Tigers shocked number 2 Duke, ending their 16-game winning streak with a 77-71 victory inside an absolutely packed and electric and just amazing environment in Littlejohn Coliseum. But it really wasn't just about the win. It was about the whole thing. I mean, that's what you love about college sports in general. The atmosphere, the emotion, the heroes of the game and the people that stepped up. And even outside of the game, we had an emotional moment as well with Dickie V being able to return after 2 years. So it was absolutely amazing environment. If you were there, hopefully you just had the blast and it was a core memory, as I like to say. But really, it's one of those things you can't sit around and just love on and just enjoy, because guess what? There's a game tonight that Clemson's got to go take care of business against another North Carolina team. We'll talk about that in the third segment of the show. But Duke came in hot, 16 straight wins, the longest active winning streak in the country. But Clemson was ready for the challenge. Fans lined up. I mean, stood outside in a long line. You saw Tiger Net's Grayson Mann taking photos of it pregame. fans were camped out Saturday morning, soaking up the warm weather and getting ready to go into Littlejohn Coliseum and make it an absolute furnace, burning up the Blue Devils. Clemson shot a blistering 58.8 from the field, the best shooting percentage any team has put up against Duke. Before this game, no team had ever put up more than 50% against the Blue Devils. So how did they do it? Well, the big thing we talked about last Friday before the weekend was that Victor Locken, and really not just Victor Locken, but the entire starting team, the starting five for Clemson, needed to stay out of foul trouble. I know Victor Locken got into some problems against Georgia Tech and really kind of, I don't want to say that was the reason they lost, because it was a triple overtime game and they had plenty of opportunities. But when your big man goes out after just 15 minutes in a game like that, it's tough to keep your composure. So I think everybody encouraged Clemson's starting five, specifically Victor Locken, to keep his composure, not get ticky-tack fouls beyond the three-point line, slap in the hands of point guards. Do what they brought you in to do as a transfer, and that is to be the big man down low, get your blocks, get your high percentage shots. And I believe, as you can see after the game, Locken delivered 22 points, 4 rebounds, 3 blocks. He absolutely dominated the paint. Clemson outscored Duke 40-22 in the paint, and he wasn't alone. Clemson runs through their superstar, their leader, their point guard, Chase Hunter. He delivered absolutely when it counted. Now, not like Georgia Tech, where he had plenty of opportunities and couldn't make it. Not this time. He came in just late in the game. The game was very close. Now, majority of the game, if you look back, it was really Duke. Duke was kind of ahead. Clemson just had a couple of turnovers here and there that just seemed to not be able to get things going. And they were just, I would say, probably just always down about 6 to 10 points, for the majority of the game. But then later on, as the game went on, they just kind of started chipping away, and Chase Hunter attacked the rim, laid it in, got an and one, and he got some clutch free throws with just just a little bit of time left. And really just did great for the Tigers at the very end, and got an amazing just block that kind of sealed the deal there, where the crowd went absolutely bonkers after that. I don't want to forget Jaden Zachary and Ian Shefflin. Both of them put up 12 points, and Shefflin had a bunch of rebounds that was extremely helpful for Clemson. And then they fouled out their big man on the Duke side of the ball. So really, just Clemson did really well to keep their composure down low, not get into bad foul trouble, keep their big men dominant. And they really bottled up Cooper Flagg, one of the best players in the country. They didn't let him run away with it. When Duke was up, he actually really wasn't their biggest contributor. He was cold. He missed 9 of his first 11 shots. And then slowly in the second half, just hit 3 straight three-pointers, to kind of say that's kind of where I felt like Duke was like, okay, this might be where they take it away and just run away with it from Clemson once he started getting a little bit hot. But Clemson still kind of kept their composure. And man, just a fitting in for Duke after all these craziness that's happened with the Blue Devils and Cameron Indoor, and just the bad fouls on Clemson's side, and the bad calls and the turnovers and whatever you could say, and the tripping. They even had a tripping situation in this game. But at the very end, their superstar, their megastar, their freshman, Cooper Flagg, he drove to the basket and slipped, causing a travel. I would have never thought a more fitting end to a Duke Blue Devil loss than to see them actually get called for a travel and them actually get it slipped on the floor. You have to give a shout out to the Clemson mop girl for that. And I did over on X as well. But I don't think it was her fault. I do think that he was bottled up regardless, because it looked like they had Locken and Shefflin there, whether or not he was able to keep his footing or not. So Duke didn't score the rest of the game, and Clemson ended up beating them 77-71, with the crowd just absolutely bonkers at the end. They stormed the court, and Dick Vitale got his return. I think it was a very fitting return for Clemson and for Dickie V. for Clemson to show Dickie V that after 2 years of battling 4 types of cancer. And, when you get into a situation like that, you really don't know if you're going to ever be able to return, much less live out your life. And so it was great to see him back. He is a hero of college basketball, a guy that everybody loves to have calling their games and brings the energy when he's out there. Obviously, I think he's there because of Duke more than Clemson, right? But it was really nice to see him there. And the Clemson fans showed him a ton of love as well. That was history for Clemson. It was the 3rd highest ranked team Clemson has ever beaten. And it was their 5th consecutive win over a AP top 5 team. The Tigers moved to 19-5 overall, 11-2 in the ACC, and they're just 1 game behind the Duke Blue Devils in the standings. That does well for them in the ACC tournament. But in the ACC title, Duke would still have to lose 1 more game in order for Clemson to be able to. Clemson had to win out, and Duke would have to lose 1 more game for Clemson to be able to have a head-to-head win over them and win the regular season, which would be another historic thing for the Tigers. So Dickie V during the game, man, was crying his eyes out. He told the fans, and I'm about to get emotional just talking about it because I've had family members that have dealt with cancer as well. But this was his Super Bowl, and man, the Clemson Tigers did not disappoint and delivered. Not only that, the Tigers, Brownell, the team, and the fan base as well. Really, really cool game. Really exciting to be a part of that, to see it and to witness it for the Tigers. Now, it's not done, though, because just because you get excited about that 1 win doesn't mean that you have to, that's the rest of your season and that's it. Clemson now hosts the Tar Heels Monday night, 7 p.m. Can the Tigers ride this momentum and stay in that ACC regular season title hunt? We'll break it down and talk about it. Can the Tigers bring the energy versus the Tar Heels tonight? All right, final segment of the show. Thank you for being a part of the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and to wherever you listen to podcasts. We're going to have this show Monday through Friday. I'm the new host of the Locked On Clemson podcast, and I hope that you're enjoying it so far. Big-time Clemson fan myself, and I look forward to getting back into the podcast game. I did podcasts for like 6 years, and then I kind of stopped once I got in the radio and my job got busier and things changed for me. So, but I'm excited to be back in the podcast game and be partnering here with Locked On. So I appreciate all the love and support everybody has given me so far. With that being said, Clemson cannot just hang on that Duke win. They got a huge win over number 2 Blue Devils on Saturday, but they're right back at it in Littlejohn Coliseum tonight to face off against the North Carolina Tar Heels. Will the fans bring the same energy? Oh, yeah. I think the fans will definitely bring the same energy. My biggest concern really is will the players have enough in the tank to face the Tar Heels and to be able to get this win? I think the Tar Heels are a beatable team for sure, but you never know when it comes to college basketball. And after a big, huge game like that, a big win like that, they celebrated afterwards. And Sunday was kind of maybe a rejuvenate game or maybe a get your rest game, because tonight, like I said, you don't have much rest for a game like this. Then Clemson will play Florida State, which I think is another winnable game. And then up after that is SMU. So after that Georgia Tech loss, we were kind of on a low, right? We were sitting here thinking, man, what is going to happen with Clemson? Are they going to lose 5 next games? They're going to make this one game, just snowball into the next? Were they kind of looking forward ahead to Duke and not really paying attention to Georgia Tech? I think when you look back, yeah, that's probably the case. Now you can't do the reverse of that. You can't just live off this high of beating this big team against Duke, 77-71, electric win. You can't just live on that and then let this Tar Heel team come in and beat you tonight. So Victor Locken led the way with 22 points. I was shocked by that. Victor has been a guy, man, if he can be dominant, the guy has a pretty nice 3-point stroke. He's pretty dominant down low with his blocks. If he can give you 22 points, the later this season goes on, and as we get into March, as we get into this tournament ball, is it not that those teams that have kind of a pretty confident center and a confident point guard, is it not those teams that go pretty deep into the tournament phase of college basketball? I mean, I think so. I think that Clemson might just be just maybe, getting hot at the right time with the right players getting hot and confident at the right time. So I think that Clemson has a chance to kind of build on this. Whereas just a few days ago, we were talking about, man, are they going to let it snowball into something bad? I think let's make it snowball into something good. The Tigers are on a roll right now, and I want to see them continue it going. They're 12-2 at home this season, and that is because of the fans. Honestly, I think the fans are going to be back out at 7 p.m. tonight. The crowd is going to be loud. They were loud against Duke. They made the difference. You could feel it. Although I will say, I wish that the television I wish that ESPN would have done a little bit better with that. I felt like that when I was watching it on television, I didn't get the feel that I normally get from a Clemson game like that. And man, did you see the picture of the Duke fan? There was one Duke fan that just happened to be in the student section, which, by the way, I got a bone to pick there. If you're in the student section, how do you even let that guy in? I mean, come on, Clemson students. You've got to heckle that guy until he gets out of there. I mean, but the good thing is they let him stay. He was overly confident to start the game out, but then by the end of the game, he was in the surrender cobra and sitting there with his hands in his lap thinking, what has happened? Why did he make this trip all the way to see his team lose? But the big question for you and for me is, and for Clemson, is can they do it again? Can the Tigers do it again Monday night, tonight? With all that excitement, with all that fired up atmosphere, can they just light it up again? Now, Clemson is favored in this matchup by 5.5 points. ESPN FPI gives the Tigers 68.8 chance to win. I don't think you can sleep on the Tar Heels, though. They're not the Tar Heels of old, but they're definitely a team 14-10 overall and a team that can push you. They got by Duke they got by Pittsburgh just barely 67-66, and they have lost 4 of their last 5 games, including a 17-point loss to Duke, which was not good. But they still have R.J. Davis, who is leading the team with 17.4 points per game. So I think that you got to bottle him up, make sure that he doesn't dominate the game. And Clemson has to focus on what they're good at and focus on what they did well on Saturday. And that is not worry so much about your opponent, not worry about the rankings, not worry about the 5 stars and the best in the country and this and that. Just worry about being the best you, right? So Chase Hunter has to continue to be a leader on the team. If he can keep shooting the way he's shooting, if he can maybe clean up his free throws a little bit, not make me so nervous. But if he can give you 15 to 20 points and Ian Shefflin can get you about 10 rebounds per game, and man, oh man, if Victor Locken can get down there and block 3 blocks and get you close to 10 to 20 points himself, I really don't see many teams that can hang with Clemson, to be honest with you. If they're clicking like they did on Saturday against Duke, I think it's really, really good for Clemson for the rest of the season. As I mentioned, they may be getting hot at the right players in the right positions at the right time for a tournament run. If Clemson wins tonight, they'll finish 4-0 against all the ACC's North Carolina schools this season. And that's something that Clemson has never done. Now, they've gotten 4-0, but they've also had a loss. They were like 4-1 a couple of years back. So they've never done that without at least one loss. And Brad Brownell hasn't had the best record against the Tar Heels, 4-16 against UNC. But this is a chance to really kind of take it over and, kind of build towards his resume of being a Tar Heel, a Duke, a Wake Forest, a North Carolina State killer, if you will. Brad Brownell is doing the right things, and I love how he brings in the right players. You can say that Brad Brownell doesn't recruit as well from the high school ranks, and I do wish that he was a little bit better in that realm, but man, he is really good at going into the transfer portal and getting players that want to be at Clemson, that give their all, and that can contribute immediately in the right positions that you need. He is a puzzle piece. He is able to put the puzzle pieces together when it comes to a basketball roster, and I love to see it. Brad Brownell, again, looks like he's going to have another great season for Clemson in the ACC, and possibly one that could go deep into March as well. That's it for this show. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast wherever you listen to them. Don't forget to follow me over on X at The Morgan T Show. And thank you for making Locked On Clemson your first listen for today. For your second listen, check out Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, I'll see you tomorrow, and I'll see you at the top of the hill.